It's Wednesday, June 17th, and this is now on HNN.
They're not taking any chances.
Beijing's new outbreak raises virus fears for the rest of the world.
A COVID resurgence as nearly 20 states see cases go up. I'm Tom Hansen with why local health officials are sounding the alarm.
And moving on from the problem before the problem has moved on from us.
Here at home, an investigation reveals HPD has consistently underreported police killings.
A discrepancy of more than half.
Senate Republicans take on police reform. I'm Skyler Henry on Capitol Hill, where critics say the measures don't go far enough.
The George Floyd incident certainly accelerated this conversation.
These stories, plus Hollywood is planning its return to Hawaii, coming up on This Is Now. Good afternoon, the time is now 12:01. You're watching This Is Now. I'm your director, producer, Jonathan, and we got Mahea in for Ashley today. We want to start with the latest numbers from the Department of Health, right, Mahea?
That's right, Jonathan. Hawaii News Now has learned there are 5 new COVID cases today, 4 on Oahu and 1 on the Big Island. Now, the case count was also decreased by 1 because of data updates, bringing the statewide total to 744. We'll have much more on where these new cases are coming from coming up on Hawaii News Now at 5.
We'll look forward to those details, but across the country, we've sort of reached this crucial point in the pandemic with cases rising again across the country. Like we mentioned, officials are deciding whether to stay the course or reopen. Tom Hansen has more in today's Talker Story.
As the crowd of Trump supporters grows outside the Tulsa arena where President Trump will hold a rally this weekend, local officials are urging caution as the city deals with a record increase in new coronavirus cases.
If you don't feel well, don't go.
The Be OK Center will be giving out masks and hand sanitizer and checking temperatures before people go inside, but masks won't be mandatory and social distancing is unlikely.
If you attend, wear a cloth face mask covering correctly.
At least 19 states have seen new cases go up in the last 2 weeks, and 6 states reported record increases Tuesday. That includes nearly 2,400 new cases in Arizona, more than 2,600 in Texas, and nearly 2,800 in Florida.
It's not just elderly people.
Roy Medina shut down his 2 bars in San Antonio, Texas, after he, his wife, 2 employees, and at least 10 customers tested positive.
I never once saw anybody walk into either one of my bars coughing, sneezing, looking sick.
In Montgomery, Alabama, where hospitalizations are rising sharply, the city council rejected a mask ordinance despite testimony from healthcare officials.
Until you actually mandate, because people don't believe the hype, we won't be able to stop it.
Here in New York, which had been the epicenter of the pandemic for months, the state reported its lowest daily death toll since the crisis began, and the infection rate is now lower than 1%.
We've gone from the worst infection rate in the country to the best infection rate in the country.
And in Denver, police are going door to door.
Food, sanitizer, stuff like that, okay?
Handing out supplies to struggling families. Tom Hansen, CBS News, New York.
Now let's get to one of the most talked about stories on HNN's digital platforms. More of those cult members that had been arrested for quarantine violations have left the Big Island and returned to the mainland. Lacey Denise has the details.
21 members of a cult, including the group's alleged leader, have left the state. 18 members of a cult were escorted to the gate at the Hilo airport last night. The members of Carbon Nation packed up their belongings and walked in a single file line to the TSA checkpoint. After leaving Hawaii Island, they made a stop in Honolulu before heading back to Los Angeles. Sheriffs were on hand to escort the members each step of the way. Their leader, Eligio Bishop, pleaded no contest to quarantine violations earlier this week. He and 2 others from the group were sent home Monday night. Prosecutors agreed to drop charges against all the other defendants if they all went home.
We have learned that some people will stop getting their unemployment while the state tries to weed out some scammers. We're told offshore criminal organizations are using stolen IDs of state residents to file claims. The acting labor director says the new PUA system for contract workers is now getting most of the fake applications, so extra steps are being taken.
We're validating the identity of the individuals to make sure that we're paying the correct individuals. We've seen a lot of identity fraud.
On top of that, we're told more than 30,000 claims are still waiting to be processed. The unemployment office has been using volunteers and is still trying to hire more examiners to catch up with that backlog. Beijing has imposed a soft lockdown amid the country's newest outbreak. Stephen Jiang has more on what that means for residents living there.
Hundreds of flights in and out of Beijing were canceled on Wednesday as a result of the soft lockdown the authorities have imposed on the city. Now, it's a soft lockdown because they were not sealing off the entire city like what they did in Wuhan. Instead, they're strongly discouraging all non-essential travel. If you must leave town, you have to present a negative result from tests done within 7 days of departure. But if you happen to live in one of the communities that have reported recent cases, then your entire neighborhood will be placed under a strict lockdown, no in and no out. There are dozens such neighborhoods throughout Beijing, and the number keeps growing. For now, though, the authorities' focus remains on this now closed wholesale food market where all of the recent 137 cases have been traced back to. Now, this place used to house thousands of vendors and saw huge crowds on a daily basis. That's why officials have been trying to track down anyone who had been there since May 30th. And so far, they have found more than 350,000 people in this category, and all of them have been tested for the virus by the end of Wednesday, according to the government. Still, they're not taking any chances. They have shut down all schools and entertainment venues, closing a growing number of tourist attractions, as well as suspending more and more long-distance bus services, with Beijing officials acknowledging that their city's new case numbers may be trending up for some time to come.
New today, we've learned that Chad Daybell has pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of destroying and concealing evidence. The bodies of JJ and Tylee Vallow were found on Daybell's Idaho property last week, according to investigators. Daybell married the children's mother, Lori Vallow, on Kauai last year. At that point, the kids had already been missing for several months. Vallow was arrested there earlier this year after refusing to tell police where her children were. At this point, Daybell and Vallow are not charged with murder, but they are both being held on a $1 million bond.
Breaking news, the Atlanta officer who fatally shot Rashard Brooks in the back after the fleeing man pointed a stun gun in his direction is going to be charged with felony murder and 10 other crimes. Prosecutors say Garrett Wolf kicked Brooks while he lay on the ground and that the officer with him stood on Brooks' shoulder while he struggled for life Friday night. Rolfe had already been fired from the force.
Now to Washington, President Trump signed an executive order yesterday about police reform. Now Congress is looking to make some changes as well. Skylar Henry is at the White House with more.
Senate Republicans laid out their plan for nationwide police reform this morning.
The George Floyd incident certainly accelerated this conversation, and we find ourselves at a place with a package that I think speaks to the families that I spoke with yesterday who lost loved ones. We hear you.
Senator Tim Scott's bill includes requirements for police departments to provide more data to the Justice Department on serious injuries and deaths. It calls for increased training for officers and incentivizes agencies to ban chokeholds.
We believe that our policy positions are one that brings the communities of color into a position of stronger understanding and confidence in the institutions of authority.
White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows says reforms can't end up compromising law enforcement.
Senator Scott and the White House have been working tirelessly for the last couple of weeks to hopefully get a piece of legislation that addresses the issues, but doesn't go too far.
Democrats say there are proposals in Senator Scott's bill they support, but they say it doesn't go far enough.
The major categories actually mimic our major categories. So I think that shows that there might be room to work together. However, from what I have seen, and again, I haven't read the language of the bill, it looks like he takes the teeth out of some of our proposals.
New Jersey Senator Cory Booker says now is not the time for half measures.
It's not a time where so many Americans feel a metaphorical knee on the neck of justice
for us to pull our knee halfway off of that neck and call it progress. No.
In the House, lawmakers are putting the final touches on a Democratic police reform package with a vote expected next week. Skyler Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
A new analysis shows that HPD has been underreporting police killings. This morning on Sunrise, we talked to our media partners at Civil Beat about the story they initially broke.
All right, we have Nick Gruby from Honolulu Civil Beat joining us live now. And he's one of the reporters who worked on a story which found that the Honolulu Police Department has been underreporting officer-involved fatalities. And he is here to talk a little bit more about that. Good morning to you, Nick. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
You know, I wanted to start off by just looking at the information itself, because first of all, this is hard to find. How did you go about looking for this information, and what did you find?
Yeah, well, what my colleagues Anita Hofschneider and Yu-Hyun Jung did is they requested all of HPD's annual use of force reports to find out how many people police officers had killed over the years in Honolulu and on Oahu. And after they made that tally, they checked that against media reports and other public records, including police reports from HPD, as well as the prosecutor's office and other medical examiner reports that we had. And we found that HPD, in fact, was under counting or underreporting the number of people who officers had actually killed, and by quite a lot. What we had found is that from 2010 to 2018, HPD had reported only about 10 lethal force incidents, whereas our count found 21. So it was a discrepancy of more than half. Sorry, it was about under half as many as that we found. So 21 versus 10.
Yeah, there was definitely a discrepancy there. I'm curious if you and your reporters, in looking into this, had a hunch that the numbers were being underreported by HPD, and that's kind of what led you down this path.
Well, we have reported on these use of force reports in the past, and what we knew from that prior reporting is that statistics and the numbers weren't really all that accurate. In fact, in 2012, for instance, HPD reported not having a single fatality or lethal force incident on the books, but we knew at that time that that wasn't true. We knew that there was one gentleman by the name of Aaron Torres who had died after an encounter with police officers, and his death was widely reported in all the local media outlets, and the city had actually paid out a $1.4 million legal settlement. So we knew that there were issues, we just didn't know the extent of how far these issues went.
So, Nick, my question is, what does this say about the transparency of our police department in the city and county?
Well, that's a great question. I think for years we have been reporting about some of the issues that HPD and other police agencies in the state of Hawaii have had for years when it comes to transparency. For instance, there's a lot that we just don't know about what happens within our local police departments, whether it's related to officer misconduct, whether it's related to use of force incidents, and specifically in this case, lethal use of force incidents. I mean, often we as members of the media and the public are sort of left wanting for more information. I mean, yes, we might have a press conference to discuss the initial incident, but we don't know the names of the officers involved, whether or not they had been involved in previous lethal use of force incidents, whether they had a troubling record of other misconduct. I mean, these are just simply things that in Hawaii are not a matter of public record.
And Nick, just specifically because of the death of George Floyd and the protests that have followed, you and your reporters did look into neck restraints in particular, right?
Well, a little bit, yeah. And so what we found was that vascular neck restraints are used in Honolulu, and that these neck restraints, while they're not that common, they do result in they have resulted in at least a couple of lethal force incidents, depending on how you want to classify it, right? I mean, most of the lethal force incidents that we found were a result of police shootings, but there have been others that involve arms of prone. An individual by the name of Stephen Dinnan, who he died after an encounter with a police officer, and a firefighter in 2013. I'm saying that Honolulu Chief Susan Ballard has said that the department, in light of George Floyd's death and the ongoing protests as a result of that, is reviewing HPD's use of force policy and has suspended the use of vascular neck restraints until that review is complete.
All right, so we have only touched the surface of this story. If you want to read the entire article, it's at civilbeat.org. You can also text Civil to 66866 to get Civil Beat's free morning newsletter. Nick Gruby, thank you for joining us this morning. Very interesting stuff.
4 former governors are now calling on the Star Advertiser to rescind those layoff notices sent out to about half the newsroom staff last week. Mahea has much more on this.
From flying high in a Black Hawk to the devastation of the Kauai floods to up close with the lava, reporter Dan Nakaso has been an eyewitness to history for decades. But last Thursday night, he and 30 other newsroom staff got layoff notices effective around June 29th. It's about half of the Star Advertiser's newsroom.
First, it was disbelief. And then I was handling a bunch of calls from my colleagues, and then immediately I went into proactive mode and started applying for jobs online.
The notice said the newspaper got 8 weeks of CARES Act funding, but said, quote, "We must reduce our workforce to ensure the financial stability of our company."
While some people still like to read the physical paper in the morning with their coffee, more people are turning to news online. Now, newspapers get most of their revenue through advertising, and because of the pandemic and financial hit, the Star Advertiser had already cut its Saturday print edition.
There's questions, even by those who got notices, if the layoffs will move forward. Star Advertiser publisher Dennis Francis told Hawaii News Now, quote, "The situation is fluid and we have several meetings set this week with the union. I apologize, but I will not be in a position to comment at this time." Meanwhile, Hawaii's former Democratic governors, including Neil Abercrombie, are taking a stand against the layoffs.
What we need is the capacity for real journalism to be not only to take place, but to be distributed to our people.
The newspaper has been through financial turmoil and layoffs before. This time, besides Nakaso, respected journalists Lee Cataluna, Kristen Concilio, Tim Hurley, and Rob Perez are among those on the layoff list.
All right, Mahea, so I guess with this new push from the governors, people want to know, are the layoffs going to happen or not?
Well, that's exactly what I've been asking the reporters, and at this point, they seem to not know. When you read that layoff notice that they were emailed Thursday night, it sounds like it's going to happen. But then all of a sudden, Dennis Francis started making statements to our partners at Civil Beat, and then it seemed like it wasn't happening. So there is confusion, there's turmoil, and a lot of emotions as these reporters are thinking that their last day could be June 29th.
And let's talk about those emotions, because it transcends to the entire market of journalists, right? It's sort of been the talk of the town amongst journalists.
Absolutely, especially for print journalists at the Honolulu Star Advertiser. You know, as we all know, print media has been struggling for many, many years, and we've seen this across the country where newspapers have had to slash their staffs, and it's happened to the Star Advertiser before. So when you talk to these journalists, they're analyzing their own layoff as journalists and looking at the facts and saying this is pretty much the sign that's the writing is on the wall. But at the same time, they're reacting to this news as people, and like other people in business, they're sad, they are trying to struggle with this news, and there is a general sense, especially for news junkies, that there is a feeling of loss, that our paper could be shrinking. And I have to admit myself, I still get the physical paper every single morning. I read it for a few minutes in the morning with my morning coffee, and when the Star Advertiser slashed or cut its print edition on Saturday, I mean, there's something to my morning routine on Saturday that doesn't feel the same.
And I feel like all the papers are getting thinner and thinner and thinner as well. I have to admit, I still read ours too, but I just steal it from our front door here at the station. I don't actually have the subscription. I don't steal it. I use the one we pay for. But, all right, guys, we've got to switch gears just a bit. We're going to take you outside. The time is now 12:19. We're going to get a check of your weather. Let's toss it over to Guy Hoggy.
How's it on this Wednesday? I'm Guy Hoggy with your HawaiiNewsNow.com forecast. We've got typical trade wind weather. That includes a few windward and Mauka showers this morning. Rainfall totals over the next several days will be insignificant. However, we've got a surplus of trade winds for the next several days, especially windy from Maui County to Kauai. Lighter winds, of course, over in Kona. So for today, we'll see lots of sunshine. We will have the occasional shower for those windward and muck areas, but again, rainfall totals will be insignificant. And with all the sunshine, temperatures running to about 90 degrees for some leeward areas. Now, the surface is expected to get a little bit bigger this afternoon for south and west shores. Not a big swell, but at least another little reinforcement. And it's going to be another very hot day, so the UV index is at 11. So we got breezy trade winds, a few windward and mucus showers, and then those temperatures running to 88 degrees. So what we see today will linger into the weekend. Lighter winds are expected this week. Now, temperature-wise, it's going to be another scorcher for the southwest. Phoenix is at 96 right now, on their way to 106. We'll have more details on air and online.
All right, thanks, Guy. Let's get to some news from social media. Mahea, what'd you find out?
Right,
there?
these are on the feeds right now. Food manufacturer Mars Incorporated says it's going to make changes to the rice brand Uncle Ben's. The brand and logo have been criticized for being based on racist stereotypes. Mars released a statement Wednesday saying it's time to, quote, evolve the Uncle Ben's brand, including its visual brand identity. Now, the company said it hasn't determined specific changes or a timeline for making those changes. Now, earlier Wednesday, Quaker Oats moved to get rid of the Aunt Jemima pancake brand and logo. Calls for racial equality have reached a fever pitch in recent weeks following the death of George Floyd at the hands of police. Worldwide protests have taken place as still more Black people are being killed by white officers.
And we've been seeing these changes not only with the food industry. We were talking earlier this week about the entertainment world. Cops was removed from Paramount's lineup. We also saw Gone with the Wind removed from streaming services. So we'll just have to see how this keeps unfolding. And a lot of people saying these changes were a long time coming.
Yeah, people are re-examining their brands, even their movies. Some of the advocates of Gone with the Wind say it's fine as long as it's put in the proper context, because it is a historical movie.
All right, let me show you what I found, and we're getting political here as well. Facebook wants to get out the vote. There will be a new voting information center that will be prominent on Facebook, Instagram Messenger, Facebook Messenger, that will remind people to vote. It will provide users with an accurate information about how to register to vote and when to vote, and also little details on how you can vote by mail. There will also be posts from state officials, Facebook says. Mark Zuckerberg has a goal to get 4 million people out to vote and registered. All right, even Facebook getting on the action. Considering how much heat they took the last election, I'm surprised they're making any sort of political maneuver right there, but
it's important to remember to vote, because people are very busy right now, and you know, the election isn't exactly top of mind for a lot of people. So any reminder to go out there and vote.
Except for you, because you were working hard on our election coverage here at HNN.
Right.
We've been shooting our Coffee with the Candidate segments, and you have another segment that's coming up just in a few weeks. So just stay tuned for those details, folks. Okay, we're going to switch gears quite a bit here. We're going to take it over to Casey Lund, who's at the Humane Society, who's asking for some special assistance during the pandemic.
Yeah, and happy Wednesday from the Humane Society here in what I'm calling the Kitten Palace. Daniel Roselle is with me from the Hawaiian Humane Society. And Daniel, really quickly, since we have all these cats here, and we'll try and show as many of them as we can, tell me a little bit about adoptions and how that has changed since the pandemic.
Sure, yeah, so we moved completely to an online adoption system, where you can select your cat or your dog online. You make an appointment, you call in. Now we've opened it up, so if you have an appointment, you can also come in and select your pet in person. But we also, and not just here, we have partnerships. So Petco Eva Beach now has our cats. There's the Pounce Luxury Cat Hotel in Kakako, and Hawaii Cat Cafe.
That's right.
Yeah,
Kapahulu area.
And so they're all partners of us. They've got great kittens of ours. So there's a lot of places you can get a new loving kitten in your life. Of course, we have a lot of them here.
And then I want to talk really quickly, as we're talking about pandemic-related things, the emergency foster care.
Yeah.
You put up some really impressive numbers when you guys were a little concerned about what was going to happen and how things were going to operate during the pandemic.
I mean, there was so many unknowns, obviously, but we found, and not just here in Hawaii, but across the U.S., that when the call went out for emergency fosters to help get those pets in homes, even if temporarily, people responded. We had almost 400 here, we kept adopting, we kept doing other fostering, but the emergency foster was a special case. Lots of animals got into temporary homes, and a lot of those animals ended up staying with the families that fostered them. They became adopted. So
another thing I wanted to talk about that we were at earlier today was the pet food bank and how that has been so vital for a lot of people during this time, especially when we kind of need, a lot of us need our comfort animals to keep them in their home.
Yeah, so keeping pets with their families is the #1 best thing for those pets' health. It's a tough time financially. Our usual pet food bank has seen a dramatic increase. We're at almost 20,000 pounds of food given out this year, and during COVID, it's a 300% increase over the same time last year. We're working with partners. We're working with the HPD. We're working with human welfare organizations to get that food where it's needed. You can get it on our campus too, Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, 10 to 1. You can get a month's worth of pet food.
And then last question really quickly before we go, the Spay New Clinic is open. You guys were worried about maybe having to close that, but man, you guys are rocking and rolling.
Yeah, we're rocking now. We had to shut it down, pause for a couple months just because of the social distancing, but we're back up and running. We're 4 days a week. So you can make an appointment online at hawaiianhumane.org, spay neuter. So that's for own pets. If you're involved in community cat trap, neuter, and release programs, you can come in. There's 10 walk-in spots for free that we're working with the city to give subsidized or free spay neuter for community cats. So we're hitting all of it. It's a very important part of keeping pets overpopulation down in a humane and compassionate way.
Very good. I know one of our co-anchors for This Is Now, Jonathan Soppy's a big cat person. So maybe we've enticed him to come and adopt. And if folks want to, again, for an appointment, you go to hawaiianhumane.org.
Adoptions.
Adoptions. Daniel Roselle, thank you so much for being with us. And I know this is a lot of important work. You guys have a bright future ahead of you too. We're going to be talking about that later down the road. But thanks again for being with us this morning.
I look forward to it, and thank you for coming. Really appreciate it.
Hey guys, I don't think so. I'm good with just the one cat. Dracula, the kitty cat, lives with me. And he's enough to handle.
But
really.
don't you want to take them home? They're so cute and cuddly.
They are so cute, and then they grow up.
That is correct.
And you always have the excuse that you're allergic.
There's a lot of people out there who want to take them home, though.
All right, let's get to some good news now.
Yeah, that's right. Amid the pandemic, there are signs of hope, and uplifting messages have been popping up all over town and across the state. Now, powwow muralists have painted about 150 signs on 14 commercial buildings owned by Kamehameha schools on Oahu and Hawaii Island. The campaign is called Mana Olana, which means hope, and we've posted a link on our website showing all of the locations of these wonderful signs of hope.
I love that. And then did you see really early on in the pandemic when the UK, all the kids would put the rainbows out? We did our Chalk the Walk, right? Did you guys take part in that?
Yeah, I just noticed a lot of little signs around town, and I think people are doing it on their own, and it really just gives you just a quick lift as you drive around.
I love it. So what's going on with our movie industry? You have an update on that, right? Jurassic World coming back?
One of the first major films to resume production will eventually come roaring back to Hawaii. Jurassic World Dominion was put on hiatus in March as the pandemic spread around the world. Universal Studios says filming will now resume in London in July after implementing $5 million worth of safety protocols, including regular testing, temperature stations, and security guards. The film reunites all major cast members from the franchise, including Chris Pratt, Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum, and Laura Dern. No word yet on when they'll return to the islands, but barring any other setbacks, the movie premieres next June.
I love that franchise. Absolutely one of my favorites. That and Back to the Future.
I wonder if they're going to go back to Kualoa Ranch one of these days. There's already a big footprint there.
I know. I've never done that tour. As big as the fan as I am, I cannot believe I have not. But when I'm driving up there, sometimes I put on the theme song on Spotify and just roll through. All right, guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now a Reminder. Starting Monday, we're going to be on KHNL as well. I saw a lot of you commenting about this yesterday. Thank you, Mahea.
Congratulations, Jonathan and Ashley.
Thank you. But I just want to let our digital audience know we're going to be here as well. It's not that we're just going to KHNL. We'll be on YouTube, H&N's digital platform, still the same way as we always have been, except for we're always going to start at noon. So count on us there at your lunch break. You guys have a great day and stay safe.